Beautiful like that. Great.
Please come in the light a little bit.
Now look into the light with your head. Turn your head into the light. And chin down into the light. That's it. That's it. Turn your head. Get the light. Oh, you can't. Okay, that's beautiful like that. Now, you got a nice framing of it now? Beautiful. Tell me when you want me to go. Oh, you have to get speed and everything. You got speed? Okay, beautiful like that.
Hey guys, I want to talk a little bit about Gia Carangi. She was an American supermodel. A lot of people consider her to be the first supermodel. She was a beautiful girl. Gia Carangi was born January 29th, 1960 in Philadelphia. She was the third and the youngest child of Joseph Carangi, a restaurant owner, and Kathleen Carangi, a homemaker. She had two older brothers. Her father was Italian and her mother was of Irish and Welsh ancestry. It is alleged that Joseph and Kathleen had an unstable marriage, which eventually led to Kathleen leaving the family when Gia was 11 years old. I heard that relatives recalled her as being needy and manipulative, shy as a child, and a mommy's girl who did not receive the motherly attention that she desired. Allegedly, in her adolescent years, she found the attention she sought from other teenage girls. She befriended them by sending them flowers. She attended Abraham Lincoln High School, where she bonded with the so-called Bowie kids. They were a group of David Bowie fans who emulated his style. She liked David Bowie's fashion and his outspoken sexuality. Gia and her Bowie fan friends would hang out in Philadelphia's gay clubs and bars. She was featured in Philadelphia newspaper ads, and she was discovered by Sandra Skirka. She moved to New York City when she was 17 years old. There she was signed with Wilhelmina Models. Her first big photo shoot was published in October of 1978. It was with the top fashion photographer Chris Von Wainheim. He had her pose nude behind a chain-link fence with makeup artist Sandy Linter. Allegedly, she ended up pursuing Sandy, but the relationship was not stable. By the end of her first year in New York, Gia was a well-established model. She rose to the top fast. She was beautiful. When I look at her, I can tell she was just a natural. I watched a 2020 special where Gia said that she started working with very good people. A lot of work all the time, very fast. She said she didn't build into a model. She just sort of became one. It wasn't her dream to be a model. She just fell into it, sort of. She was a favorite model to various fashion photographers, which includes Francesco Scavullo, Von Wainheim, Arthur L. Gort, Richard Avedon, and Dennis Peale. Gia was featured on many fashion magazines, including the April 1979 issue of British Vogue, the August 1980 issues of Vogue Paris, the August 1980 issue of American Vogue, the February 1981 issue of Vogue Italia, and she was in multiple issues of the Cosmopolitan between 1979 and 1982. She appeared in a number of advertising campaigns for high-profile fashion houses, including Armani, Versace, Christian Dior, and more. At the peak of her career, Gia was most known in the modeling circles by only her first name. Gia had her own struggles. The real world became muddled by illusion. She talked about how when you're young, it's hard to know the difference between what is real and what is not, particularly when you're innocent and there's a lot of vultures around you. She started doing drugs. She usually used cocaine in clubs. Allegedly, after her agent, friend, and mentor, Wilhelmina Cooper, died of lung cancer in March 1980, Gia was devastated and began using drugs and developed an addiction to heroin. Allegedly, she started acting erratic and it started affecting her work. She had temper tantrums, walked out of photo shoots to buy drugs, and fell asleep in front of the camera. During her interview, she admitted to doing drugs. She said, "It kind of creeps up on you. It catches you, and no one will ever know except someone who has been there." I could see a sadness in her eyes. She seemed somewhat broken. As stylist Sean Burns was asked on the ABC show called Vanish what made Gia so different, and he said it was because of her vulnerability, her sensitivity. She was a little lost girl that was confused in many ways. Photographer Francesco Scavullo said that they were aware that she was on drugs. He went on to say she was a real person. He loved her. He said she was very charming and very sweet, and she was very vulnerable. And he had that feeling that he wanted to take care of her. Thing of Beauty author Stephen Fried said she was a woman who looked incredible, so everybody assumed that her life was incredible. He said her every action was saying that she's in trouble, but people kept saying, "You look great." Allegedly, during one of her final location shoots for American Vogue, she had red bumps in the crooks of her elbows where she had injected heroin, and despite airbrushing some of the photos, as published in the November 1980 issue, reportedly still showed visible needle marks. In November 1980, Gia left Wilhelmina Models and signed with Ford Models, and she was dropped within weeks. Her career was on a decline. Modeling offers soon stopped, and her fashion industry friends allegedly refused to speak to her, fearing their association with her could harm their careers. I read that in an attempt to stop using drugs, she moved back to Philadelphia with her mother in 1981. She underwent a 21-day detox program, but her sobriety was short-lived. She was arrested in March 1981 after she drove into a fence in a suburban neighborhood. After a police chase, she was taken into custody, where it was later determined she was under the influence of alcohol and cocaine. After she was released, she was briefly signed with a new agency, Legends, and worked occasionally, mainly in Europe. In 1981, she signed with Elite Model Management. While some clients refused to work with her, others were willing to hire her because of her past status as a top model. Francesca Savullo photographed her for the April 1982 cover of Cosmopolitan, her last cover appearance for an American magazine. Sean Burns, Scavullo's longtime assistant, later said what she was doing to herself finally became apparent in her pictures. He could see the change in her beauty. There was an emptiness in her eyes. Gia then mainly worked with photographer Albert Watson and found work modeling for department stores and catalogs. She appeared in an advertising campaign for Versace shot by Richard Avedon. He hired her for the fashion house's next campaign, but during the photo shoot in late 1982, she became uncomfortable and left before any usable shots of her were taken. Methadone, she got enrolled in an outpatient methadone program, but soon began using heroin again. By the end of 1982, she had only a few clients that were willing to hire her. Her final photo shoot was for German mail-order clothing company, Auto GmbH, in Tunisia. She allegedly was sent home during the shoot for using heroin. She left New York for the final time in early 1983. She allegedly spent most of her modeling earnings on drugs. The final 3 years of her life was spent in Philadelphia and Atlantic City. She was admitted to an intense drug treatment program at Eagleville Hospital in December 1984. She later got a job in a clothing store, which she eventually quit. She later worked as a checkout clerk, and then she worked in the cafeteria of a nursing home. Allegedly, by late 1985, she had started using drugs again and was engaging in sex work in Atlantic City. She was admitted to Warminster General Hospital in Warminster, Pennsylvania, with bilateral pneumonia in December of 1985. She was later diagnosed with AIDS. In the fall of 1986, she was hospitalized again after being found on the streets badly beaten and sexually assaulted. On October 18th, she was admitted to Heinemann University Hospital in Center City, Philadelphia. Gia died at the Heinemann Hospital of AIDS-related complications on November 18th, 1986, at only 26 years old. I read that her funeral was held on November 23rd at a small funeral home in Philadelphia. It is said that no one from the fashion world attended her funeral. Francisco Scovula sent a mass card weeks later when he found out. She was buried at Sunset Memorial Park. Harry King, hairdresser, said Gia was fantastic. She worked very, very hard, and what happened to her was not unique. He said a lot of girls did drugs and began to show up late. There were lots of girls who got a bad rap, but Gia was just unlucky. Gia rose to prominence really fast. She was the world's first supermodel and natural-born beauty. I think she was born to be a star. There is a movie about her. Angelina Jolie played her. It's called Gia. She did a good job with that movie. I hope Gia is at peace now. Rest in peace, Gia.
It kind of creeps up on you and catches you in a world that's, none that anyone will ever know except someone that has been there.